Hi, good morning, good afternoon to all of you here. Now, we're here to speak about lighting. Lighting is an important element in architecture and interior design, as we know. Of course, a lot of architecture depends on the natural light created by God. But there's a huge dramatization in the interiors by artificial lighting. And that's really what we're here to discuss today. It can add visual interest to an ignored corner and glamorize the most ordinary of spaces. All of this, when we thought that how can we make it better, there came automation to add threads to the imagination of designers and the aspirations of users. So what we have here today is a panel of magicians who actually bring all our aspiration, moods, and designs to light by light. Let there be light. So let's begin. I'm going to start with Mr. Basur since he's a stalwart in the industry. So I would like to define for our audience what is lighting design and how did it start and how has it evolved in the past 3 decades of your experience?
That's a difficult one. What is lighting design? Now, a lot of people say the right light at the right place at the right time. There are many definitions for this. I treat lighting as a feeling. For me, it's a feeling. So it's creating the right ambience with light. Yeah. So we normally say we beautify the light, but that's not always true. It's about creating. It's by and large very difficult to explain what lighting design is, but it's a combination of a lot of things. So it's the right ambience, I would say, the right feeling which it gives to you. So that's what light is.
So I love the fact that you said it's a feeling because it's not just product, it's not just technology, it's actually a feeling and how it makes us feel. So Harmeet, I'm going to quote you from your LinkedIn. I love that quote. It said, stop looking at the light and start seeing it. So what made you see the light and become a lightopreneur in your shift of profession, and what is the inspiration you saw in the future of this, and what were the pitches and the value proposition that you gave clients when this profession was almost non-existent?
Well, the quote actually is just to explain that how the sea is larger in context than looking at things. So that is where it comes out. Stop looking at light and start seeing it, which is a very, very important aspect of beginning of lighting design or thinking a space or that matter how the light behaves in the spaces. And I got an experience of it first time when I was a very young engineer, went to a site and I was programming the whole lighting controls for that place. I met this gentleman called Babu Shankar. He's a very important name in lighting design. And what happened was he walked into that space and what we saw is, and he was almost about to cry in that space. It is Rambagh Palace and coffee shop of it. Everything was wrong in lighting. Lighting fixtures were incorrect. Fixtures were not working, the wrong beam angles, everything which a lighting designer who does not want to see was there. And he walked into that space, he started working with it, whatever it was. And I helped him, went up the ladder and fixed that. Whatever he told me, I kept on doing it. When I got down that ladder, that space was completely transformed, completely changed, absolutely stunning looking. And it was not my opinion. And in fact, trust me, I didn't even know when I was standing there first that it was looking very poor. But what it changed, when I got down the ladder and saw that, I said, I need to learn this somehow. And I'm still learning. That's what I'm trying to achieve, what he achieved. And he's my mentor, and that's where it started.
Lovely. Zubin ji, when I look up online, okay, Zubin, when I look online, what is defined as lighting design and a lighting designer is often linked with theatrics and dramatics. So do you think it's our need today of extra drama in interiors and the expectation of, just batting the ball out of the court that has led to the need for lighting design as a separate consulting? And how did you do it 15 years ago or 20 years ago? How has it changed and what has become better or worse?
I don't think it's a need for dramatization, if that's what you said. I don't think it's the need to create impact. It's just the fact that when we see lighting designers at work, we are seeing how they are picking up elements and dropping the ball, creating shadows to make the light feel better. That art is what I'm always looking for in our projects. And I'm not able to do it successfully, and I need someone to handhold me through it. Previously, it was very basic, I want to call it. Lighting design was considered very basic. There's enough brightness in the house, you can dim it down for a party, end of story. Nobody's picked up the art correctly, nobody's picked up the veneer correctly, nobody's highlighted your center table correctly and dropped it where you're sitting, you know, and then he's missed your eye vision, a line of sight, and caught the artwork above your head. So it was very, very difficult initially to get these things right. We also had very few fixtures to play with. I'm talking 20 years ago. We had just the one range of halogens that just ran through everything, and then two forms of it. Either it would be a picture light, it would be a downlight, and then it would be fixed or eyeball. That's it. Degrees were not even known. There was no such thing as anti-glare. You have to move to a QR 111 to get anti-glare. You know, it's yeah, and finer spots. So it was always a boon for us to have our clients agree to invest in a lighting design consultation. And even today, a lot of clients feel that it's not important. Just go to a vendor. We like his fittings. He'll design it for us. He'll give us the lux calculation. He'll tell us what's right, what's wrong. But that vendor has to do it from his range of products. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's not a pure design-centric consultation. It's a product-driven consultation. Like, that vendor has this array of products, and he's going to propose from it. Now, I'm sure that the big boys have enough to cover every aspect, but I still would prefer a purist thought of how a person, a lighting design consultant, would understand your design, work with you, and do the correct application of fixtures in each place. So that's what I always look forward to in projects now.
Lovely. Now, we spoke about design centricity and product centricity. Ashmit, I believe you're doing a lot of neuro design, and I would love to know more about neuro design and neurosciences with lighting so that everyone here knows what it can do to us if used in the best way possible.
Certainly. So neuroarchitecture is a very new field, better, which is the impact of spaces on human beings and why we do the things we do. Why do we behave differently when we are seated in different parts of the room, for that matter? And one of the observations is that, for instance, if you're sitting in a space which is very white and bright, the words per minute that you speak will be more. You'll speak at a louder volume, thinner pitch. If you look at a human being, for instance, in a plan, they expand. And just the opposite of that becomes true too. The yellower it is, almost amber, and the dimmer it is, the less words per minute we speak at a lesser volume. So that's one of the reasons why you will never find a fine dining environment in white and bright light, because it just has a psychological impact. So neuroarchitecture is not just about, in terms of materials, textures, but at the same time, anything which has to do with vision, because it has to do with light, you tune the areas accordingly to bring the most out of wherever you want the expectancy to be.
So pivoting back to our topic, which is about function. So we have, of course, the well-being. We have multiple types of lights and interiors, which is general, ambient, mood, task, and accent. Nirmit, I would love to know that while human centricity has become a buzzword, and we have the neuroscience behind it, we have the function behind it, what is the element of well-being that lighting can implement, not just emotional, but actual health? Because with the pandemic, of course, health has become a very large focus for every product and every service. So what is the human centricity towards well-being that lighting can provide indoor, outdoors, or anywhere and everywhere?
Thank you. First of all, when we start a project with a client, we define the lighting design objectives as visibility, spaciousness, and atmosphere. So that concept of ambient light, accent light, and all, we have redefined it in these 3 parameters, wherein visibility is for your visual need, ability to see things properly. Spaciousness is the appreciation of architecture, the appreciation of space and time. And the atmosphere is where the mood and emotional aspect comes into the picture. Now, as a physicist, there has been a lot of research in the health effect of light. And that's where in specific applications, like to remove the jet lag or spaces below ground where someone is going to spend most amount of time without a natural light, or to treat Alzheimer's disease or seasonal affective disorder. So that is where this non-visual aspect of light or the effect of light is also being used traditionally. If you see Scandinavia, they have been using this. In our culture also, early morning Surya Namaskar, that's also our way of greeting and treating ourselves with light. Yes, light is one of the factor which can affect the health, but it's not the only factor. Like we experience and we live with all our senses. So it's a holistic approach with all the senses that can, if come in tandem, like all the consultants or collaborators on a project, they come together and they bring in value, a healthy or a well-being type of a project. So yes, lighting, if applied in a specific way at specific time, it could be helpful. And I think yesterday's session, whomsoever has attended with Amardeep, he very well explained this non-visual photobiological effect of lights. It's worth studying and applying. It's still at nascent stage, but application is at a nascent stage, but the laboratory experiments have shown that yes, it does affect the amount of light given at a specific time of the day can affect.
Wow, that's interesting. We're talking about, our well-being, but there's also urban well-being of a city. So, I mean, what is the application of light? Since Mr. Basur has a lot of experience in urban scale lighting, what healing can lighting give to a city in terms of cultural fabric, in terms of security, safety, and various other layers that you design when you design lighting at an urban scale?
This is something on which we can go on and on because we're working on a project with the Chinese government on 24-hour cities, and it's more about darkness, creating darkness than creating more light. So actually this project on which we're working is we've understood that most of our cities have been designed for the day, not for the night, and our roads are designed for cars and not for human beings. And so we're working towards a dark night, but a functional city in a dark night. And that is something which is the next step forward. Unfortunately, in our country, we're not talking about 24-hour cities anymore. But as yet, I think we will start to talk about them. But light adds a lot of glamour to the evening. That's one thing which it does. It provides safety. That's a given. That's the whole purpose where we started with light for. And then, of course, it beautifies the city. In fact, there's been a lot of research recently, even in India, and government The tourism ministry is working on it. So night tourism is something which we're going to promote in cities in India. It's already happening with certain cities. So light has a lot to do, and it adds a lot of life to the night.
You also spoke about, in one of your articles, about light pollution. I mean, we would love to hear about that how light can pollute.
Light is as toxic as air. Light can be as toxic as air if not used properly. So, but the best part about light pollution is that if people understand it, and if you are aware of light pollution, you can switch off the light and you can control the light. So controlling light pollution saves money for the government, for the public, for everyone. So it's something which is not expensive. So light pollution is just more about awareness. We've done multiple projects in China where we've created awareness workshops with students, with young children, starting from almost toddlers, 3 to 4 years. They talk about light pollution and go to municipalities. Just imagine a 6-year-old going to, to the mayor of a city and explaining to him what light pollution is and how you can control it. And we've done a lot of work on that, and we're happy that one of our master plans, the Shenzhen city master plan in China, we reduced the light pollution by 60%. And the impact has been wonderful. The city looks much prettier at night. It's more visible. The architecture is more highlighted. Light pollution, actually what people were doing, they were lighting up cities blindly. The gluttony for more light, the appetite for more light in China was killing the architecture there at night.
Especially in the lighting city, Shenzhen.
Yes, Shenzhen was one of the major culprits. But by reducing the light levels, by reducing light pollution, we brought out the architecture, the landscape of the city, and the city looks much prettier now. So
I'd like to add, he's done a beautiful concept of the moonlit city in Shenzhen, which the entire city at night is actually lit like it's by moonlight. So that's a lovely concept that can be integrated at an urban scale. So now going back to the micro scale, Ashmit, lighting is the cheapest and most influential tool that we can use to tap into the subconscious of a person that is visiting a commercial space. You do a lot of retail. How do you think it impacts the way a person buys or doesn't buy or interacts, the whole user experience of retail as defined and designed by light?
So lighting can be used to guide your eyes to what you want people to see. For instance, if we look at the way that FOAID is lit in 3 different color tones, there is a visual speed to how we would see things. The red, if I look at red, and even if I say, okay, we're looking at red for a fraction of a second, our speed will increase by the time we look at green, and it's going to become stable by the time we look at orange. It is also nature versus nurture in terms of what we talk in terms of psychology. In retail, you have to first tell them, then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them, which is to reassert a sale so that it happens. So focal pointing becomes important in terms of visual merchandising. General lighting also becomes important so that the people feel that they're in control, but they're usually not. They're always pre-guided in terms of sales. The premium we go in terms of retail environments, the more luxurious it gets, the dimmer it gets so that we can control the vision, and the yellower it also gets. You can also increase the pace of people. For instance, McDonald's. If you're having a hamburger in McDonald's, and if you time yourself, you will eat it faster than if you would eat it for Delhiites in Nirula's because of the way the lighting is, versus the way you would eat it if you're in a fine dining. That's what fine dining does. It makes you consume the same thing in an hour and a half, what you can easily do in maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
Slow food and fast food with light. So we've spoken about function, we've spoken about what is light, how it started, the whole consulting, and where we've reached. Now let's talk about perception of the client and of the public. Zubin, in your span of experience, there have been perceptions about lighting expectations. Like you said earlier, it was just function. And today there's an expectation of how lighting can impact a space. What is it different today with, with the collaborative effort with the lighting designers and 3D visualizations, of course? Where do you start involving the lighting into your project? At the stage of 3D or towards the end when we're looking for products? Or is it client-driven, or is it your suggestion? Where does it start and how does it work?
There's no real rule of how it starts. It could be a client who's evolved in design and it would like to have the lighting designer on board initially. But if it was up to us, we would have the lighting design on board as soon as we finish ceiling. As soon as we know our ceiling heights, we know our materials, we would want the lighting designer in. Because determining the ceiling height would mean knowing what fixtures are going in. So they would become almost an integral part of that first MEP core process, right? That would be ideal for designers. It's a bit of a difficult journey to keep inviting the designers, the lighting designers, to be part of that whole design process. And every time a material changes, we keep telling them that now this has been changed, or this design is now selected for the other room, and now this room has to be redesigned. They would go a bit batty, trying to keep up with our design changes. So that's the reason we wait for 3Ds to happen, but we've already understood that we need this much depth of false ceilings, and if you're looking for an in-ground light, you know what to do, you know where to have the cores made, etc. So we kind of right now in that management stage where we know what the designers may ask for and let's be ready for those things. But I would like to say that past 3D is where the lighting designers have to come in. Once the 3Ds are made, the 3Ds they only have indicative lightings even now. And then if there's specific decor elements to come in from lighting, those get put into the 3D. But even 3D views, I don't think that they're powerful enough to capture the exact quality of the fixture, which is technical. It's always like a cove is just a cove and a spot is just a spot, and we just say, go tighter on the table or go tighter on the sculpture or whatever, you know. I don't think it's that useful. The 3D is not that useful to sell light to a client. It's eventually has to be, I've noticed, no matter how much we try and project and, you know, present, it's, at the end of the day, it's the fixture mock-up that sells the light. You know, nobody can be sold CRI without doing a good and a bad on the same piece of furniture. So I have a feeling that that process will probably not go away in a hurry. You'll have to do your entire mock-up of every fitting that the lighting designers propose. They have to go to the vendor, they have to pick up the fitting, they have to get it, electrician has to come and fix it up, mock it up, wait for the night, do that whole mock-up. That's never going to go away.
But does that mock-up work without the interiors done?
It's the best chance you've got of selling your concept. It's the best chance you've got. So a small part of the planter with a small piece of the linear light, and now you've got 100 feet of that coming. Yes, it does help.
It works. It works there.
Yeah, and then, yeah, you're right. Like if you have got very, very tight focus spots, then 4 of them covering 100 square feet will sell another 1,000 square feet concept, right? I have no other way to do it but that.
Right. But mock-ups actually for interior spaces do not work till you have the furnishings and the furniture and the furnishings on. So exteriors, yes, it does work.
Yeah. So we've started now doing double false ceiling sheets. So we do a complete interior. The interior is ready for a second gypsum sheet. The first gypsum sheet is used for mocking up lights upon lights upon lights when everything else is finished. Then we hop on one more sheet and paint it off.
Got it. Got it.
So in Nirmit, you've spanned your entire career over different countries, different continents, different aesthetic exposures and user experiences. In your opinion, how is it different in India when you did a deep dive into the Indian market? the same perception that he's talking about of how lighting became a large content of our spaces. How was it different when you came in, and how has it evolved?
I think I would say, like talking about a public project, it would be more inclusive, participatory. You would talk to the stakeholders around your building, various users, and there'll be a voting system for your project to pass or not pass. Also, budgeting for your project, it would be in a more, I would say, inclusive manner, I would say. But here, yes, there are less people, so it would be maybe easy here. That thing to manage is a little difficult. Talking about commercial project or the retail, I would say abroad there is a very much demand, or I would say design awareness, that it's given that, yeah, you need a lighting designer. Here also, yes, that trend in last 10 years, it has evolved tremendously with the grown number of available designers. Also, the products have been now very much available for all. Various kind of products have developed with more ability and possibilities for the designer. So, and it has also become complex. So that's where a more number of specialists are needed, and that's happening in, I think, both the societies, here and abroad.
That's interesting. Like we speak about lighting a lot, and lighting, of course, there's artificial light and there's natural light. Harmeet, as a lighting designer, when you actually design a space and light it, do you also look at the interplay between natural and the artificial and the transition from one to the other when you actually design the lighting, particularly for the interiors?
Absolutely. In fact, there is nothing, when we design a project, there is nothing like a separate exterior lighting, interior lighting. In fact, to an extent, we also go against the whole idea of decorative lighting and architectural lighting and then accent lighting and then various bits. So the whole composition together with the interiors has to be curated onto it. And first of all, we also need to realize now that we are brought in almost at schematic stage. I've seen times when we were brought in after the RCPs were frozen. That was the time. Now we have got to the schematic stage. So when the architects have thought through the space, they are exactly clear about what they want to achieve out of that space. That is where we are brought in. So in fact, I would request if really we want to contribute to the daylight aspect to it, we need to bring in much further earlier onto it, which is not really before the architect, but during the architect being ideating about it. Because see, lighting again is both the sides. It's a right brain and a left brain activity. Most of it is happening by the architect. He is already thinking it. If we are sitting together with it, at that moment, I think we can make a lot of difference during that time. And specifically speaking about daylight, because it has to be looked into how the windows are placed, how the ceilings are created, how some of the reflections can be taken. Nobody asks us what color of walls we should use. We should contribute to that. We need to come and talk about that as well. What kind of a flooring is required? We complain about lights reflecting into the floor. But that was already decided. We are coming in very late. How do you not put a light and not get reflected on the floor? So all these are aspects. Earlier we are brought in, earlier we sit together, listen to you, probably hold your hand and say, don't do this right now because you are not going to get what you're wanting to do. Yes, please.
It will be one more set of yes and no session. मतलब client भी करेगा, आप भी करेगा. हम लोग कब design करेगा?
नहीं, हम आपके साथ separately बैठ के करके लेके जाएंगे client के सामने.
How much to deal?
No, But does the same light or the same lighting scheme, do you think it works in the transition time? Because that's something I'm very curious about, the whole twilight time in a house, or particularly in a house, actually. How do you, does automation help you in creating those modes for twilight and then night?
So that's what, I started my career with lighting controls, which I told you the small, why I am here today is as well. So lighting controls is that bit or that part of lighting, which is very important, because that is what is the challenge. The lighting has to transform from the morning to evening in every context. Not only, some of the examples I can tell you is, in Antara Senior Living project, when we designed the senior living, we did a very, Perkins Eastman just approved us as a consultant because they had to, just because I said at the entrance level, which is touching the daylight, is going to be at 1500 lux. When all of us mostly would think that we need lesser light because a lot of light is coming in. But the point is, we needed to create a transition for the old aging eyes so that when they come from several thousands of lux in the outdoors into the vestibule area, they have a time to get their eyes dilated to a darker environment of about 200 or 300 lux. So all these cannot happen without not being engaged into that. And also the controls or thinking through the space, thinking through the context of it, it's all part of it.
So, given that, I mean, what matters more, Ashmit, you can help me with this. What matters more in a space? Is it architecture, the interior textures, or is it the lighting that actually livens up any space the moment you walk in? What's the most impactful in a space that you've designed?
Lighting has a purpose, and the purpose is to highlight the interiors or the architecture. You know, it's not an end in itself, but it's only a means to be able to control what we need to see.
So on that note, Zubin, would you tell me if there's any time where you've actually felt that there's certain things we imagine as designers and architects, and there's certain things we don't. So has the lighting sometimes blown you away, a reflection that you didn't imagine, or a shadow that was cast, or a glow that illuminated something which you never noticed? Has that ever happened where you've been just taken aback at what you designed because of the light?
Almost always. Almost always. I've always been schooled by a lighting designer. I've not worked with too many. Some of them are sitting here. But whenever I've actually indulged them, they've always blown me away. It's always taught me something new. So I'd like to say yes, for sure. It's very, very meaningful, very, very impactful, and very educational. You always think you know something, but then somebody comes and does it better, and then you realize that you were doing it just okay.
I think it's also the architect, he plays the role of a director, sort of, in a project. And then there are other set designer, product designer, lighting designer. And they all complete a movie or a spatial experience. And that's what I think increasingly will become the role of an architect. That he can't do everything by himself.
But Nirmit, I would pick 10 on 10 for my 10 out of 10 projects. I would pick a lighting designer. My battle's always with the client. I would like nothing more than to hand over that baton to somebody who works in collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's gonna be a better looking project at the end of the day. So why would I not want it, right? And you know, it's not that I'd want to do it with you and then learn it and do it again the next time myself, because even the next time is going to be a completely different interior, right? Your light has to transform according to every project.
Yeah, but that would depend on the size of the project as well. And there are many smaller projects also where you might not have a freedom to bringing as many experts as you would like. So that's where that sensibility, again, the baton of sensibility comes to the architect, that they need to be sensitive to this aspect.
So Nirmit, I mean, on that note, is there any project where you felt that your lighting made it look so much better, but you couldn't say it?
No, I wouldn't say it on the camera.
On national TV.
No, the answer is actually it's really the
Be honest.
collaboration, the understanding of the architect, landscape designer, interior designer, even the execution people, the execution team. We as designers or architects, we do a lot of time spent on the conceptualization, getting the thing properly budgeted and all. But at the end, the person who are going to make it, they are also very important, and they should feel that this is the effect that they want to achieve. So I think it's a collaborative effort as such, and not a single consultant or expert can do that alone, because it's a overall, we sense with all the senses, like I said before. Visual senses, maybe visual senses is more powerful sometimes, but...
Thank you for being politically correct. So Ashmit, talking about impact again, since we're on that topic, where does lighting make a larger impact, residential or retail? Where do you actually sense it back when you see the eyes of a user, and where can you experience that impact more? When working with lighting as a design and as an element that you consciously and deliberately try to control and emote?
Well, both, but in a different way. In retail, you do it in a more temporary way because you expect people to just come in, do the work, and then leave. But in a house, it becomes more consistent. It becomes more complicated in homes, too, because retail will typically be either in a mall space or in a controlled high street where the light movement is controlled. In a house, you would have several seasons coming in, and also when you're doing an interior space, for instance, if there is a window which is there, and depends on what direction it is, it just makes it more complicated. In homes, the other thing which has to be tackled is the well-being. Now with the LEDs, which is a big problem. So equally for that matter, but just that you look at it differently for different genres.
So when we're speaking about impact here again, I mean, this is actually open to all of you in lighting. What impact is, and what is the decision-making impact of cost of light and cost of product and cost of the entire process and selection to create the choices that the designer wants and the effect that the client wants? Where does cost play as an impact factor?
First of all, the cost of hiring a lighting designer. That's where it starts. There has to be a budget, there has to be a number, has to be a placeholder that we need that. And then, because I also feel if it's not there, it's not valued. And we being able to explain or justify whatever we are going to do is going to be less listened or heard. That is a big thing which I think specifically in this part of the world, unless you pay for it, you don't really respect it well. So cost of the fixtures is another aspect, because what is happening is we are seeing a lot of fixtures which do light, do look pretty, do look okay, but they are extremely wrong for your health in every ways, which is by itself a topic which we need to discuss. The electronics which goes into it, what quality it is doing, how much glare control it is, it's very subjective elements. There are measurable parameters for it, we do specify, but most of the time, most of the manufacturers themselves are unaware of it and just ignore them and think that they are giving what we are asking, but it is not most of the time. So right from, as Zubin mentioned about CRIs and the color temperatures and all that bit, it's very important and relevant, and LEDs are not easy now. It has made our life much more miserable because consistency and everything. All that costs. If you want a consistent product which will last longer, serviced as the life finishes, I think it is going to cost.
You get what you pay for. Yes, true. So on that note of well-being, there's a big buzzword of sustainability. So especially when we design heritage, which you've been doing a lot in terms of involving lighting and relighting heritage elements which even the artisans never imagined. There's a lot of sensitive materials to light, to heat, to a lot of maybe UV wavelengths. So when you design lighting up a heritage building, how sensitive are you to it, and getting the products that actually work with the sustainable environmental and material elements, how expensive is it? So the whole balance between sustainability, cost, function, need, and the impact, where do we start and how do you manage that?
First of all, I always believe that the building or the heritage which we are lighting is going to stay for centuries, and the lighting is going to last for a few years, maybe a decade. So the life cycle of that lighting design or the light installation on the buildings is very small compared to the buildings. So it's a no-no, absolutely no to any intrusion onto the building. So we are very careful as long as it's possible to light up without an intrusion. We would light up only then. So that's something where we start from. But it goes without saying that if you are thinking of highlighting properly the details in architecture, particularly in India where our traditional architecture is fairly detailed, you need precision of light. So precise fixtures are expensive. The number of fixtures would increase if you are doing precision lighting, so that's a cost again. So I think we're getting there. There are very beautifully lit buildings in India now, and people are very careful. People have understood the importance of good lighting, and they're spending for it also. So the government is getting aware, because most of the heritage belongs to the government. It requires a little more of convincing to the government, and there's of course the tendering process, the L1 process, which does have which takes back the impact a little bit, but we're getting there. It's a very positive thing happening now.
Coming to our last element in our topic, which is illusion. Now light, a glow illuminates, we light a candle, there's a shadow, and then of course there's a glare that obscures. So there's light, shadow, and glare. What do you think, Nirmit, when you work with lighting, do you try to work more with lighting, with shadows to create depths, or impacts of emotions like the neuroarchitecture he spoke about? When you light architecture and interiors, where do you start on, do you decide the shadows first, or do you decide the lighting first, or the feelings first?
Certainly the emotions first, and like I said, defining the three objectives of visibility, spatiality, or the atmosphere. So depending on the project, which one is more important, that's how we start. And what to light, what not to light, these are some of the basic questions that you would start the inquiry with. What the place wants to be. Like architect also, as architects, we always inquire that what the place wants to be, what the program wants to be, and that's how you define the lighting requirement.
And how far has India come in terms of lighting technology, in terms of design, innovation, production? Are we ready for Made in India lighting products to take the center stage for an international audience?
I would say there's a consumer lighting and there's a professional lighting. I think in consumer lighting we have met our demands maybe, or we are doing that production. But in terms of architecture lighting, especially the outdoor architecture lighting, we are still growing, and our standards are also growing in that region. And interior lighting as well. I mean, you will see here like Plus Light Tech. It's a homegrown industry. So, so there, yes, they have come up with, they have collaborated with the best in the industry, and they are catering to the local architectural need. Basur Saab or Harmeet, if you want to say anything about it.
I think he rightly put it. The consumer lighting in India is fairly good. but architectural or professional lighting, as we like to call it, we're still going there. We have some distance, we've covered some distance, but we are progressing, yes.
Good to know. And this is, of course, now open to everyone, and this is a bit of a not to be politically correct question. Now, when designers and lighting consultants work together, how much of conflict and how much of collaboration tends to come, because architects are known to be the most egoistic people. So where does this start, where does this end, and how do we resolve it, and how do we kind of make it work?
I don't think an architect should appoint a lighting designer if he's going to be egoistic. That's the first step. Like, if you're going to be egoistic, don't bring in a partner. So I guess the guys who bring in the partner are ready for input. But if they're going to headbutt, then maybe something good will come out of it. But if they're just doing it for ego, they've made a mistake. That's what I feel. So I'm always looking forward to getting inputs, which is why I want a partner, right?
Anything from the lighting team?
I think if we don't bring in that, I think ego is lovely. It's a beautiful emotion, and we must have it. But I think achieving that ego is something which we should talk about in that forum more than, because the journey is to bring in something which is very relevant and absolutely correct. That's what architect's intention is. I've been working with as many as, I think, about 100 odd architects in this part of the world and throughout the world. I haven't had this kind of experience, to be very frank. If you are really speaking relevant, it is going to be heard and it is going to be implemented. Be it Norman Foster to KPF to anybody, I have had experience. And I'm not even an architect. I can't even comment on design, the capability what these guys have and those architects have. I'm not an architect. But I do not refrain from saying what I want to say. And I'm okay if it's not listened or not heard. But let's try and pursue. And if everybody understands that if this whole conversation or a discussion is to create an ego, which we are going to talk about after this project is finished, I think the solution is there. So that's pretty much, I handle it in my context to it.
It's like a jugalbandi or a good orchestra. If everyone gives each other room to express, then you end up with a good concert.
I think it's extremely collaborative. End of the day, the project has to win, not the architect, interior designer, or the lighting designer. And I think it's very easy to understand. If the designer is designing something, and if he's also curating the way the impact of that space has to be for the viewer, and if the lighting designers help assist that, I think there's absolutely cohesion in tandem. Yeah.
Okay, great. Now,
but just a quick one. If I come in and ask you to change your floor, would you do that?
If you ask me to change the form...
Change a floor for a justified reason for lighting, would you do that?
It can. It has to be reason sensitive. Again, the point is, end of the day, the project has to win, not the designer. If it's in the intent of the overall project and if it can be made better, 100% of the times.
I would change it if it's not yet laid.
That's what we need. This is what I'm looking forward to.
no, but like when we have our consultants, plumbing or electrical, they say, okay, this pipe is going from here and we don't change it. And that's a given. That becomes a part of the given. Similarly, if a lighting consultant was to come and say, I think you should highlight this more than that, how open are we as architects, interior designers, to make that switch?
Like I said, it's if you're in it for the partnership, if you're in it for the collaboration, you've got to hear him out, right? And if there is merit in what they're saying, why not make the project benefit, like Ashmit said? The project is our boss. I mean, we are the keepers of the conscience of the project. So whatever suits that end purpose, we should abide by it.
Absolutely. And in your experience as lighting designers, who do you think drives what you do? Is it the client or is it the architect?
We are chameleons. We are absolute chameleons. That's what I call, this is the most suited definition for lighting designers. And we are brought in to improve something already was thought to be perfect. That's what it is. And that's what our job really is. Of course, then becomes a collaborative aspect, how the projects, every project is different, but we need to work, if you see lighting designers work, any of us, it will be commercial, it will be heritage, it will be street lighting, it will be office lighting, it will be all. So we do not technically have a language. We follow the language which is created by an architect, and that's a very important role of a lighting designer. And of course, bring in quality to it, bring in character, if allowed. At some places, architect has allocated, I want to do something lovely here. Maybe lighting is an opportunity we want to play. Yes, we work with that and then move around. But really, we are chameleons. We will move from a very, very different tastes and different genres of architecture and adapt ourselves to do it rightly, make a visual comfort in place, bring the longevity into this. These are the core principles which we have to carry, apart from making it look good. That is, most of us want, and do the magic sometimes.
So now I'm going to end with a rapid fire. We're going to start with the lighting designers first, lighting magicians first. You just have to choose one option, just one word. What is your favorite thing to light? Landscape, architecture, or interiors?
Landscape.
Downlighting.
Oh, sorry, I don't have answer to that.
So what's your favorite thing to light? Landscape, architecture, or interiors?
All.
What do you focus more on when crafting the lighting? Function, perception, impact, or illusion?
Hierarchy of vision.
Functional impact.
Perception.
Light or shadow, what do you prefer?
It depends upon the place.
Both.
Yeah, without shadow, there is no light. Without light, there is no shadow.
Okay, now it's Ashmit and Zubin, it's your turn now. What's your favorite light source? Incandescent or LED?
Answer.
We all know.
Incandescent.
Incandescent by far.
What matters more to a client when it comes to lighting? Function, perception, impact, or cost?
I think function.
Function and cost.
And again, what's your favorite thing to collaborate with a lighting designer? Interior or architecture?
Interior.
Interiors.
Okay, great. So this is for all of you. Who does a client listen to more when it comes to lighting? The architect or the the architect, interior designer, or the lighting consultant?
Who does the client listen to more? The interior designers or the lighting consultant?
According to me, if the client is someone who can't make up his mind, which is most of the cases, they will look to the architect to decide for them whether the lighting designer is right or not. And that, you're the consultant of the consultant, sort of.
I agree with what Zubin said. I would rather try to convince the architect rather than convince the client whenever we are in doubt. So the architect is easier to convince and because he understands the subject. The client would not understand the subject, so it's easier.
I think most of the time, especially in interiors, interior designer, but when it comes to outdoors, I think certain bit of more attention is paid for lighting designers.
Yeah, I think like a good patient, you would listen when you have heart problem, you would listen to a heart surgeon. So, yes, in projects, client tend to listen to the script writer, so who is maybe the program brief generator, the architect. Yes, it depends on the issue, like they say that what's the advice that you are seeking, and based on that, I think the client would listen. But always, I think we complement each other. Sometime if it is about client asks us that, oh, how do you like the elevation, or how do you like the space? So at that time, because we understand architect, interior design, or all landscape design's language, his philosophy, so we help cement that to reinforce that, and the either way also it happens.
You know, the lighting design is a super specialized job, but it's ultimately the architect or the interior designer's role to put everything together. I mean, including structure, lighting, MEP. So finally, the designer will have to take a call that is he able to deliver to the client everything that is intended and promised.
Great, guys. Thank you. I'm going to end with some beautiful words by Rumi. If light is in your heart, you will find your way home. So let's stay lit, and you guys keep us lighted, and good day, everyone.